Your salary can look like security while one employer controls your financial oxygen. Daniel Reed had $42,000 and a chance to buy Brightline Facility Services, a company producing $1,600,000 in revenue. The seller claimed $300,000 in annual owner cash flow. Bank debt and seller financing made ownership look possible. Daniel walked away. Why? Because what he discovered turned a life-changing opportunity into a trap. You will learn how to expose the same kind of danger before it owns you. Daniel is 38. He manages operations for a commercial heating and cooling contractor and earns $92,000 a year. The $42,000 sits outside his retirement accounts. It took 12 years to build while he paid a mortgage, raised 2 children, and kept an aging car on the road. That money is not just savings, it is family protection. It is a possible acquisition contribution. It is due diligence, legal work, working capital, and emergency liquidity. It is also Daniel's first credible movement from depending entirely on salary toward controlling something productive. But the same dollar cannot perform all those jobs at once. If Daniel puts the money into a deal, it stops protecting the household. If he keeps all of it untouched, ownership may remain permanently out of reach. He is not simply deciding what to buy. He is deciding which future loses access to the money. This is not a reckless fantasy about saying yes to every loan. The dangerous opportunity is rarely the one that looks obviously absurd. It is the one with impressive revenue, a cooperative seller, interested lenders, and numbers that become weaker only after you remove what reality will continue charging. You are going to learn how to expose false owner cash flow. You will learn to identify the real source of repayment and see when a personal guarantee carries business failure into personal life. You will learn to test whether earnings survive after the seller leaves and whether lower upfront cash creates more pressure after closing. The central skill is not borrowing. It is surviving access to money without becoming controlled by the claim attached to it. Most people operate inside one of 3 financial systems. Some borrow to consume and spend tomorrow before it arrives. Some fear every form of debt and wait so long that productive assets remain permanently beyond reach. The third group does not worship debt or condemn it. They ask 4 questions. What does the capital control? What repays it? What claim follows it? What breaks first when the forecast fails? Daniel's $42,000 makes those questions personal. A loan can help him control a company. It can also place fixed payments against cash flow that may disappear. An investor can fill a funding gap. That investor can also take ownership and authority. Seller financing can reduce the cash needed today while preserving a price the business cannot support tomorrow. The money is never the entire deal. The claim is part of the deal. That is why an attractive source of money can be more dangerous than an obvious rejection. Rejection stops the fantasy. Access allows the fantasy to acquire paperwork, deadlines, professional fees, and emotional momentum. By the time the weak economics become undeniable, the buyer may already feel committed to becoming the person the deal promised he could be. Daniel will face opportunities that look easier because a lender is interested, a seller is flexible, or the collateral is visible. None of those signals answers the survival question. They only make saying yes feel more respectable. Daniel's job is not the enemy. His job created the $42,000. It gave him operating competence. He understands technicians, scheduling failures, equipment breakdowns, customer complaints, project estimates, and the small operational errors that quietly destroy service businesses. Employment gave him cash, skill, and credibility. The weakness is concentration. His mortgage, household savings capacity, and borrowing strength depend heavily on one salary. If that income stops, several parts of his life come under pressure at the same time. A paycheck can keep a structure alive while also proving that someone else controls its oxygen. The first enemy Daniel must understand is not employment itself. It is the respectable financial dependence created when every raise becomes permanent overhead and every future choice requires the next salary to arrive. That danger becomes obvious when 2 people begin from almost the same place and use higher income in completely different ways. Marcus and Eleanor each earn $85,000 a year. Their starting incomes are similar. Their ordinary expenses and ordinary debt are similar. Neither has family money waiting behind them. 8 years later, Eleanor has directed $88,000 more toward ownership than Marcus. That result does not come from a lottery win, a secret investment, or extreme deprivation. It comes from what each person allows a raise to become. Marcus gets promoted. He upgrades his apartment. 2 years later, he finances a premium car. Dining becomes more expensive. Travel becomes more impressive. None of it looks reckless. Every payment fits inside his income. That is why the damage remains invisible. Marcus saves $4,000 a year. Eleanor makes one decision before lifestyle can negotiate with her. Half of every raise moves toward assets first. She still improves her life, but she refuses to turn every improvement into permanent overhead. She saves and invests $15,000 a year. After 8 years, Marcus has directed $32,000 toward ownership. Elena has directed $120,000. The difference is $88,000. Same starting income, similar opportunity, completely different control. Marcus bought a more expensive normal. Elena bought options. She can survive longer without work. She can wait through a weak job market. She can inspect a business, contribute to a property, or reject financing that requires desperation. Marcus may look wealthier. Elena is harder to control. Lifestyle inflation is dangerous because it rarely arrives looking irresponsible. It arrives as a better apartment after a promotion, a safer vehicle, more convenient travel, a standard of living that now feels deserved. The problem is not enjoyment. The problem is permanence. A recurring expense is a claim on future labor. Add $600 a month to your lifestyle, and you do not create a one-time $600 decision. You create a demand for $7,200 after tax every year that the expense survives. $7,200 must now arrive before that money can protect you, fund an opportunity, or buy back your time. That is the hidden exchange. The purchase gives comfort now and quietly sells part of every future paycheck. A person with high income can still become financially fragile when enough reasonable upgrades stack into a monthly minimum that cannot bend. The issue is not whether you can make the payment this month. The issue is what the payment will force you to tolerate next year. Would the upgrade still feel affordable if it reduced your ability to leave a weak job? Would you still want it if it forced you to accept a bad deal because your monthly life could no longer tolerate patience? Daniel feels that conflict inside one account. His aging car is inconvenient. The $42,000 could replace it with something newer and more reliable. The same money could pay for accounting reviews, legal work, a technical inspection, an acquisition contribution, working capital, or household protection if income stops. $1 cannot defend the family and chase the opportunity at the same time. That is opportunity cost. The visible purchase is easy to see. The future surrendered to fund it is not. Daniel needs a cleaner test than asking whether something is affordable. What does it create? What does it require? A vehicle creates transport, comfort, and status. It requires insurance, depreciation, fuel, and possibly payments. A rental property creates rent. It requires vacancy reserves, repairs, taxes, insurance, management, and debt service. A company creates revenue. It requires payroll, equipment, customer retention, leadership, and working capital. The object is not the complete asset. The full economic system attached to it is the asset. Some systems send cash toward you, some pull cash away, some do both, and the truth appears only after every claim is counted. Liquidity matters because liquidity buys time. It allows Daniel to meet pressure before desperation chooses the terms. But saving alone is slow. If he saves $10,000 a year, 4 more years adds $40,000, assuming life does not interrupt the plan. That is discipline. It still may not buy a healthy company or meaningful commercial property. This is where caution can quietly become permanent delay. Paying cash can be safe. Refusing to understand productive leverage is not analysis. Blind borrowing is dangerous, but blind avoidance can leave a capable person waiting forever for certainty that never arrives. Daniel does not need to abandon employment immediately. He needs to use employment deliberately, preserve liquidity, build competence, strengthen credibility, then direct those advantages toward an asset that can eventually produce without consuming every hour he owns. His $42,000 is too small to purchase the scale he wants alone. Outside capital can close that gap. It can also create a new owner before Daniel has built the margin to survive ownership. Outside capital looks like opportunity because money arrives before Daniel has personally saved it. The amateur sees the amount arriving. The owner studies what remains attached. Bank debt gives speed. It can place a productive asset under Daniel's control before he has saved the entire purchase price. The cost is not only interest. The loan may carry restrictions, collateral, scheduled payments, and a personal guarantee. The payment survives even when the forecast does not. Seller financing gives time. The seller accepts part of the price later instead of collecting everything at closing. It can bridge a legitimate funding gap. It can also protect an inflated price by making a weak deal easier to enter. Equity gives endurance because an investor does not create the same fixed monthly pressure, but equity takes ownership. If the company becomes highly valuable, the investor continues sharing in that success. Suppose an investor contributes $200,000 for 35% of a company. 5 years later, after debts are paid, the company sells for $1 million. The investor's share is worth $350,000 before counting earlier distributions. Debt charges for time, equity charges for success. One creates a fixed claim on cash, the other creates a lasting claim on value. Customer deposits provide cash before delivery. 200 customers paying $250 each place $50,000 in the account. The company is not $50,000 richer, it owes 200 promises. That cash carries an obligation to perform the work. Supplier credit provides materials now and delays payment for 30, 60 or 90 days. It closes a timing gap, but it also places a claim on future cash and future trust. A partner may bring customers, technical knowledge, reputation or operating capacity. The cost can be economics, authority or independence. Debt takes payment. Equity takes ownership. Customer money takes delivery. Supplier credit takes future cash. Partners take part of the control or part of the reward. There is no free capital. There are only different claims. Before Daniel becomes excited about any source, he must ask what arrives, what must leave, what was promised, what control was surrendered, and what happens when the expected cash arrives late, smaller, or not at all. The difference becomes obvious through one machine. A company needs equipment costing $240,000. The owner contributes $60,000. A bank supplies $180,000. Annual loan payments equal $42,000. Start with the strong forecast. The machine produces $70,000 a year after labor and materials. Subtract $42,000 of debt payments. $28,000 remains before tax, downtime, and surprise repairs. The machine carries the financing and leaves some room. Now change one number. The machine produces only $30,000. The debt payment still demands $42,000. The company now faces a $12,000 shortfall before anything breaks. Same machine, same loan, same legal obligation. Completely different survival result. The financing did not become evil. The forecast became false. That is why productive debt cannot be judged by the label on the asset. A machine is productive only if its realistic output can carry labor, materials, maintenance, financing, and the cost of being wrong. Daniel already possesses two forms of capital, cash and competence. His salary created the $42,000. His work taught him how service operations fail. Those advantages make him more credible than someone with only ambition. But credibility is not the same as resilience. A bank may like Daniel's salary. A seller may respect his operating experience. An investor may believe the story. None of them will live inside his household if the asset stops paying. Access can arrive before protection. That is the approval trap. A lender can say yes because repayment may come from the asset, Daniel's salary, his collateral, or his personal guarantee. The lender's decision answers one question. Is there a defensible path for the lender to be repaid? Daniel must answer a different question. Does this asset deserve a place in his life? To earn and survive outside capital, he needs 5 proofs: character, cash, competence, repayment, resilience. Character means the numbers remain honest when hiding the weakness would make financing easier. Cash proves Daniel can delay consumption and place his own resources at risk. It does not prove he knows how to operate the asset. Competence asks whether he can preserve customers, employees, systems, and service quality after the previous owner disappears. Repayment asks where every scheduled payment comes from in a normal year and in a weak year. Resilience asks how wrong the forecast can be before Daniel loses control. A plan that survives only perfect execution is not a plan. It is a monthly obligation waiting for reality to arrive. Daniel looks credible on paper. He earns $92,000. He has savings. He understands service operations. Then the weakness becomes obvious. The $42,000 is almost all his liquid capital outside retirement accounts. Use it for an acquisition contribution and his family reserve collapses. Use it for due diligence and closing costs, and less remains for working capital. Keep it fully protected and the deal may become impossible to close. Daniel may be credible enough to obtain money before he is resilient enough to survive it. Maya Chen shows how quickly approval can hide that difference. Maya is a senior engineer with strong income, excellent records, and a clean financial history. She wants to buy a 6-unit residential property. The property reports $74,000 in annual net operating income. Net operating income is the property's income after expected vacancy and ordinary operating expenses, but before mortgage payments, income tax, and major capital replacements. In plain English, it is what the building produces before the loan and large future repairs make their claims. The proposed debt requires $62,000 a year. Divide 74,000 by 62,000. The result is about 1.19. For every dollar of scheduled debt payment, the property produces roughly $1.19 of operating income, 19 cents of breathing room. That 19 cents is not profit in Maya's pocket. It must absorb every forecasting error that remains outside ordinary operating expenses. A softer rental market, an insurance increase, a collection problem, or a major replacement can consume it before Maya receives anything. Then Maya learns the roof may require $20,000 within 18 months. Now the bank approves the loan. For one moment, the approval feels like validation. The lender reviewed Maya's income, the property, the documents, and the collateral. The answer is yes. A professional institution is willing to provide the money. The decision suddenly feels safer because someone else has examined it. Then the meaning reverses. Approval confirms access. It does not transfer the consequences away from Maya. The bank may be protected by Maya's salary, her other assets, and her personal guarantee. The property does not have to be strong enough to protect Maya if Maya is strong enough to protect the bank. That is not proof of corruption. It is proof that the lender and the buyer are measuring different risks. The lender asks, "How can we be repaid?" Maya must ask, "Why should this property deserve my capital?" Reserve $20,000 for the roof and the first-year economics turn negative. Add a modest vacancy increase or insurance jump and the remaining cushion disappears. The building can fail its owner while the loan remains defensible for the lender. Now make the guarantee personal. A personal guarantee means the failed asset may not contain the failure. Subject to the agreement and local law, the obligation can follow the borrower beyond the property entity. The investment stops paying. The debt follows Maya home, her salary, her savings, her other assets, her future choices. A legal entity may hold the building. The guarantee creates a bridge back to the person. Would the approval still feel like victory if the lender's strongest repayment source was Maya? Would the property still look self-supporting if her salary had to rescue it? Maya should reject the property at the current price and structure. The bank says yes. The numbers say no. That is not a lost opportunity. It is judgment refusing to be flattered. Daniel changes the question guiding his search. He no longer asks how large a company $42,000 might help him buy. He asks what quality of business can safely carry the capital required to buy it. Scale is seductive. Survival is decisive. The next company appears to generate $300,000 in annual owner cash flow. It has enough revenue to make Daniel imagine a different identity and enough hidden weakness to threaten everything that gave him the chance to buy it. Brightline Facility Services cleans and performs light maintenance for offices, medical facilities, and warehouses. The company has operated for 11 years. The owner wants to retire. The asking price is $900,000. Annual revenue is $1,600,000. The seller claims $300,000 in annual owner cash flow. That is the headline Daniel wants to believe. $300,000 sounds like a business capable of replacing his salary, servicing acquisition debt, and moving his family into a different financial position. The financing also appears possible. Bank debt and seller financing could be structured. Ownership no longer feels theoretical, but revenue is only the first number. Start with the headline. Brightline produces $1,600,000 in annual sales. Now remove the direct cost of delivering the work. Direct service labor costs $820,000. Cleaning supplies and subcontractors cost another $220,000. Total direct costs equal $1,040,000. Subtract that from revenue. Gross profit is $560,000. More than $1 million has already disappeared before office overhead begins. Now remove the operating costs. Office payroll, including the seller's salary, costs $150,000. Vehicles, fuel, and insurance cost $105,000. Rent, software, accounting, and legal costs equal $65,000. Marketing and miscellaneous overhead add $30,000. Total operating overhead is $350,000. Subtracted from gross profit, operating profit is $210,000. The seller then adds back his $90,000 salary and presents $300,000 in owner cash flow. The arithmetic works. The economic claim does not. This is where a headline becomes dangerous. The seller is showing cash available to someone who can perform the seller's work, accept the seller's delayed equipment spending, and ignore the financing used to pay the seller. Daniel is not buying a number on a page. He is buying every task and liability required to keep that number alive after the seller leaves. So he rebuilds the cash flow from the ground up. An add-back is an expense the seller says will disappear after closing. The salary may disappear. The work does not. Someone must supervise employees, protect customer relationships, approve bids, solve scheduling failures, respond to complaints, and keep the operation moving when problems arrive before sunrise. Daniel estimates that replacing the seller's work will cost $100,000 a year. Start with the claimed $300,000. Subtract $100,000 for real management. The realistic operating benefit falls to $200,000. The first $100,000 disappears because Daniel cannot buy the company and pretend leadership is free. That deduction changes the decision immediately. Brightline is no longer offering $300,000 to an owner. It is offering $200,000 before equipment replacement, acquisition financing, working capital, tax, and surprise. Then Daniel inspects the vans, floor equipment, and maintenance tools. Historical replacement spending has been unusually low. That can look efficient. It can also mean the seller delayed the bill for the buyer. Maintenance capital expenditure is the money required to keep productive equipment alive. Ignore it, and the company appears stronger while its vehicles and tools quietly consume the future. Daniel estimates that Brightline needs $35,000 a year reserved for equipment replacement. Subtract $35,000 from $200,000. Sustainable cash before acquisition financing falls to $165,000. The company has not lost a customer. No recession has arrived. The seller's $300,000 claim has already fallen to $165,000 because reality continues charging for management and equipment. Now add the financing required to buy the company. The proposed bank loan and seller note would demand a combined $118,000 every year. Subtract $118,000 from $165,000. $47,000 remains before tax. $300,000 became $47,000. Management replacement removed $100,000. Equipment reserves removed $35,000. Debt service removed $118,000. $253,000 of apparent cash has vanished, and the remaining $47,000 is not Daniel's reward. It is the shock absorber. One pricing mistake can damage it. One van failure can consume it. One delayed customer payment can turn it negative. One weak quarter can force Daniel's $92,000 salary to rescue the company he bought to reduce salary dependence. Daniel could enter the deal. He could not survive it comfortably. Then the working capital requirement appears. Working capital is the cash required to keep the company operating before customers pay. It is operating oxygen. A profitable company can run out of it before reported profit reaches the bank. Brightline pays employees every 2 weeks. Several customers pay 45 to 60 days after invoicing. Accounts receivable total $240,000. $70,000 has remained unpaid for more than 90 days. Daniel estimates that the company needs at least $120,000 of reliable working capital, plus a separate emergency reserve. He has $42,000. That money is already competing between an acquisition contribution, legal and accounting costs, working capital, and family protection. It cannot cover all of them. An equity partner could fill part of the gap, but the partner would take ownership and possibly control. More capital can solve a shortage of cash. It cannot strengthen fragile economics. Then Daniel finds the number that ends the argument. 35% of Brightline's revenue comes from one regional hospital network. That is $560,000 from one customer. The contract can be cancelled on short notice. The retiring owner personally manages the relationship. No employee has a meaningful connection with the hospital's procurement director. This is not one weakness. It is two weaknesses fused together. Customer concentration means one customer can damage the repayment plan. Owner dependence means the person protecting that revenue may disappear after the sale. Daniel estimates that losing the hospital account would reduce annual gross profit by about $200,000 after the related labor and supply costs disappear. Brightline's normalized operating benefit before maintenance capital expenditure was roughly $200,000. One customer can erase nearly all of it. The customer can leave. The seller will leave. The debt stays. Rent stays. Office payroll stays. Vehicle costs stay. The $118,000 of annual acquisition payments stays. Revenue can move. Debt is rigid. That is what leverage does to a weak structure. It does not create the weakness. It converts the weakness into a fixed personal problem after closing. Quality of earnings is the truth test. Are the earnings accurate, repeatable, and transferable? Will customers remain? Are wages realistic? Is maintenance delayed? Does the seller perform essential work that the statements describe as optional? Brightline fails where it matters most. The revenue is real. The durability is not. Daniel rejects the transaction. The decision still hurts because the numbers are not the only thing he must surrender. He has already imagined becoming an owner. He has imagined leaving employment, controlling a company, and telling people that Brightline produces $1,600,000 in annual revenue. Walking away means releasing the identity before anyone else can see it. Could you let another buyer take a deal your numbers reject? Could you remain an employee for another year rather than purchase 10 years of pressure? Could you spend money on due diligence and still call the result successful when the answer is no? Daniel walks away. Not because debt is evil, not because ownership is impossible, not because fear wins. He walks because the price, financing, working capital demand, customer concentration, and owner dependence place rigid claims against fragile cash. A lower price could improve the margin. A longer transition could reduce some owner dependence. Payment tied to retention of the hospital relationship could share risk. None of those changes creates customer diversity overnight. The deal still asks Daniel to expose his savings, salary credibility, and family stability for $47,000 of pre-tax breathing room, while one customer can erase the engine. Walking away costs time and professional fees. Closing could cost control of his life. That is Daniel's first real transformation. He began by believing financial power meant raising enough money to buy something larger than himself. Now he understands that power begins earlier. Power is exposing false owner cash flow. Power is finding the claim attached to capital. Power is refusing access when the asset cannot protect the person accepting it. Power is allowing the numbers to destroy the fantasy before the fantasy destroys the family. The strongest buyer is not the person who can raise the most money. It is the person who cannot be emotionally forced to use it. Daniel still has his job. He still has his $42,000. He still has the mortgage, 2 children, and the aging car. From the outside, almost nothing has changed. Financially, everything has. He is no longer searching for a loan large enough to create an identity. He is searching for cash flow strong enough to survive reality. Starting a company means creating movement where none exists. No customers, no employees, no operating history, no trusted suppliers, no reliable cash flow. Buying an existing business can place you inside a moving system on the first day. Customers already pay. Employees already know the work. Suppliers already extend terms. Revenue has already entered the bank. You are not building demand from zero. You are acquiring demand. That can move an earner into ownership faster than salary savings alone. But the history belongs to the previous owner. The buyer must discover what survives after that owner leaves. Brightline taught Daniel that attractive owner cash flow could collapse under realistic costs. Ridgeway building controls would test something harder. Was Daniel buying a transferable company or financing Laura Bennett's job? Ridgeway installs and maintains automated control systems for small commercial buildings, thermostats, sensors, control panels, energy management systems. The company has operated for 14 years. Laura wants to retire. The asking price is $760,000. Annual revenue is $1,480,000. Reported pre-tax profit is $126,000. Then Laura presents adjusted owner earnings of $302,000. That number changes Daniel's emotional temperature. It is more than 3 times his salary. It makes the asking price feel manageable and another year as an employee feel unnecessarily small. This is where 3 kinds of buyers separate. The idea chaser sees growth before proving the existing business. The job buyer purchases revenue and later discovers the seller personally created it. The system buyer asks what remains when the seller walks out. Daniel slows down. Laura begins with reported profit and adds back expenses she says will disappear after closing. Her salary was $98,000. Her spouse received $28,000 for bookkeeping. The company paid $14,000 toward a vehicle used partly for personal purposes. $12,000 was recorded as travel. A software conversion cost $24,000. Add those amounts to pre-tax profit and the total reaches $302,000. The arithmetic is correct. The economic story is incomplete. Laura's salary can be added back when measuring the benefit available to an owner-operator. Her work cannot be removed. Someone must manage employees, protect customers, review estimates, and solve operating problems. Daniel could perform that role, but then part of the $302,000 is payment for the full-time job he would be buying. The bookkeeping cost remains. Ridgeway still needs payroll support and accurate accounts. Daniel estimates proper replacement will cost $40,000 a year. The vehicle contained personal use, but the company still needs transportation. $8,000 remains a real business cost. $5,000 of the travel appears personal. The other $7,000 supports an industry event that produces leads. The software conversion is genuinely unusual. That $24,000 add-back survives. Then Daniel examines equipment spending. Ridgeway has replaced unusually little diagnostic equipment, tools, and control hardware during the previous 2 years. Laura calls that efficiency. Daniel sees a delayed invoice from reality. He reserves $20,000 a year for maintenance capital expenditure. Start with Laura's $302,000. Correct the bookkeeping, vehicle, travel, and equipment assumptions. Normalized owner benefit falls to approximately $227,000. $75,000 disappears before a customer leaves or the economy weakens. Daniel has separated historical accounting from transferable economics. Now he removes the income his household still requires. Daniel earns $92,000. If he leaves employment to operate Ridgeway, the business must first replace that salary. Subtract $92,000 from $227,000. $135,000 remains before acquisition debt, income tax, and unexpected costs. The company has passed the first earnings test. It has not passed the cash test. Ridgeway has $230,000 in accounts receivable. It holds $65,000 in inventory. It owes suppliers $175,000. Add the receivables and inventory. Subtract the supplier obligations. Net working capital is $120,000. That value is trapped between performing work and collecting payment. Daniel must still test whether customers will pay, the inventory is usable, and suppliers will preserve Laura's terms. Then the closing terms reveal the real cash requirement. Laura plans to remove cash and several receivables before selling. Only $55,000 of working capital would remain inside Ridgeway. The company requires $120,000. Daniel must replace the missing $65,000 immediately. The price has not changed. The amount of cash needed to operate after closing has. Legal, accounting, and closing costs add approximately $18,000. Preliminary financing would require about $105,000 in annual debt payments. Daniel had $135,000 after replacing his salary. Subtract the debt payments. $30,000 remains before tax. Laura began with $302,000 in adjusted owner earnings. Daniel is now looking at $30,000 of expected surplus, plus a $65,000 working capital hole that must be filled at closing. The deal still looks profitable on paper. The buyer's real margin is thin. Now Daniel damages the forecast deliberately. Suppose first-year revenue falls by 10%. 10% of $1,480,000 is $148,000. Assume Ridgeway retains roughly 42 cents of gross profit from every lost dollar of revenue after labor and materials adjust. The decline removes approximately $62,000 of gross profit. The $30,000 surplus becomes a $32,000 shortfall. Nothing catastrophic happened. First-year revenue simply arrived 10% below history. Daniel's $42,000 could cover that weak year, but only by consuming the liquidity protecting his mortgage, children, household, and aging car. The question is no longer whether Daniel can assemble enough money to close. It is whether one ordinary forecasting error turns the company into another claimant on his salary. Daniel tells Laura the transaction cannot support her price, the missing working capital, and a safe personal reserve at the same time. Laura does not reduce the price. Instead, she offers something powerful enough to reopen the entire decision. She will finance part of the acquisition herself. The cash barrier falls. Daniel's desire returns, and the next question becomes more dangerous than the first. Does seller financing solve the transaction or merely move the pressure? Seller financing can be highly useful. The seller accepts part of the price over time, reducing the buyer's cash at closing while remaining connected to the company's future. That connection can align incentives. It can also preserve a price the business cannot afford. Laura's first structure looks like a solution. A bank will provide $535,000. Laura will carry a seller note of $205,000. Daniel will contribute $38,000. Those sources cover the price and $18,000 of transaction costs. Laura will also leave normal working capital inside Ridgeway. The working capital gap disappears. The deal appears financeable. Then Daniel calculates his personal position after closing. $4,000 remains. He would control a company priced at $760,000 while holding $4,000 outside it to protect his personal life. The transaction could close. The buyer could barely absorb a surprise. A failed car, delayed invoice, or transition problem would immediately attack the same tiny reserve. Daniel pushes back. Laura increases the seller note to $225,000. Daniel's contribution falls to $18,000. Now $24,000 remains liquid for his mortgage, children, household, and aging car. Less cash leaves Daniel on closing day. Then the annual obligation changes the meaning. Bank debt service will be approximately $82,000. The seller note requires another $44,000. Total annual debt service becomes $126,000. Ridgway's normalized owner benefit is $227,000. Daniel still needs $92,000 to replace his salary. That leaves $135,000. Subtract $126,000 in debt payments. $9,000 remains before tax and unexpected costs. The down payment fell. The repayment pressure rose. Daniel preserved liquidity at closing by accepting a structure capable of consuming that liquidity after closing. That is the low down payment temptation. A smaller contribution makes ownership accessible. It does not make the company more productive. Laura offers another concession. Daniel can delay seller note payments during the first year. The first year becomes lighter, giving him time to stabilize the transition. But deferred payments do not disappear. They wait. The question is what improves before month 13. Without stronger revenue, staffing, or retention, the obligation returns to the same narrow repayment source. Flexible terms can move pressure through time. They cannot create missing cash flow. Then Daniel investigates the revenue he is being asked to finance. 31% of Ridgway's sales comes from Meridian Health Properties, a regional operator of medical offices. The account has remained for 8 years, but the agreement renews annually and can be terminated with limited notice. Laura personally manages the relationship. She attends every review, approves every major proposal, and handles every serious service problem. No employee has been trained to replace her. The contract belongs to Ridgway. The relationship belongs to Laura. The company has passed the historical profit test. It has not passed the transfer test. Then the technical dependence appears. Laura performs much of Ridgway's advanced control system programming and final estimating. Daniel understands operations and project management. He cannot immediately replace that specialized work. An experienced control specialist would cost approximately $72,000 a year. That cost was missing from the earlier normalization. Subtract $72,000 from the estimated owner benefit of $227,000. $155,000 remains. Daniel still needs $92,000 to replace his salary. That leaves $63,000 for debt service. The proposed debt payments equal $126,000. After replacing Laura's technical contribution, the business can cover only half the required debt payments. The seller is willing to finance the price. The company cannot finance the payment. This is the missing repayment source. More bank debt cannot program control systems. A larger seller note cannot protect Meridian. An investor can contribute money, but money cannot manufacture transferable expertise on closing day. Daniel proposes a different allocation of risk. He requests 2 years of technical availability from Laura and an earnout tied to Meridian's retention. An earnout makes part of the price depend on future performance. If Meridian remains, Laura receives more. If Meridian leaves, Daniel does not pay the same full price for revenue that disappeared. The request matches payment to transferability. Laura refuses. She offers 6 months of transition assistance. She wants a clean retirement and predictable seller note payments. Her position is rational. She built the company and wants certainty. Daniel's position is also rational. He is being asked to finance value that still depends on Laura's labor, technical knowledge, and customer relationship. Laura wants those risks removed from her life while her fixed claim on the company remains. Daniel needs the person creating the value to remain exposed to whether it transfers. Their interests do not align. He could lower his salary, borrow more working capital, delay payments, or bring in an investor. None of those changes replaces Laura's technical skill. None protects the Meridian relationship. When every operating weakness requires another financing adjustment, creativity stops solving the deal and begins hiding it. Daniel walks away. Not because seller financing is weak, because the value being financed is not fully transferable. A seller note can solve timing. An earnout can share uncertainty. Retained equity can keep the seller exposed to future performance. But no structure can turn missing technical labor into durable cash flow. Consider a simpler business priced at $500,000. It produces $90,000 in annual cash before acquisition debt and tax. The buyer contributes only $25,000. The remaining $475,000 is financed. Annual debt payments equal $84,000. $6,000 remains. Divide $6,000 by the buyer's $25,000 contribution. The apparent cash return is 24%. The percentage looks strong. The margin is weak. One equipment failure can erase it. One delayed invoice can erase it. One employee replacement can push the owner below zero. The return percentage improved because the equity cushion almost disappeared. That is why low cash at closing can create high pressure after closing. Ridgway offered operating history, customers, and real earnings. What it could not prove was that those earnings would survive Laura's departure. Daniel leaves with his capital intact. His next opportunity looks more tangible. A building, 8 tenants, visible rent, physical collateral. But property can hide weak economics behind the easiest number to admire: the monthly rent. Does the property support its own debt, or does the buyer's salary secretly support the property? Maple Court is a hypothetical 8-unit building. The asking price is $720,000. Each unit rents for $1,250 a month. 8 units produce $10,000 in scheduled monthly rent. That becomes $120,000 a year. The headline is clean: 8 doors, $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. But scheduled rent is the perfect version of the building. Every unit occupied, every tenant paying, every month arriving on time. Reality begins with what fails to arrive. Assume $6,000 is lost during a normal year through vacancy or unpaid rent. Effective rental income falls to $114,000. The first correction is small enough to feel harmless. Now remove the operating expenses. Property taxes cost $20,000. Insurance costs $7,000. Ordinary maintenance costs $10,000. Owner-paid utilities costs $6,000. Management costs $9,000. Administrative and miscellaneous expenses add $2,000. Total operating expenses equal $54,000. Subtract that from $114,000. Net operating income is $60,000. The building started with $120,000 in scheduled rent. After normal vacancy and ordinary operating costs, half remains. That $60,000 is what the property produces before mortgage payments, income tax, and major capital replacements. It is an important number. It is not what the owner keeps. Assume the buyer contributes a $180,000 down payment and borrows $540,000. Annual debt service is $44,000. Subtract the debt payment from the $60,000 net operating income. $16,000 remains before tax. Now reserve $8,000 a year for roofs, heating systems, flooring, and other major components. Practical spendable cash falls to $8,000. $120,000 in scheduled rent has become $8,000 in practical cash. The property kept collecting rent. The financial disguise came off. Now calculate the cash actually exposed. The down payment is $180,000. Closing and financing costs add $18,000. Immediate repairs require $22,000. Initial reserves require $20,000. Total cash invested becomes $240,000. Using $16,000 before the capital reserve, the cash-on-cash return is approximately 6.7%. Using the more conservative $8,000 after the reserve, the practical return is approximately 3.3%. That calculation ignores appreciation and tax effects. It asks how much current cash the property produces against exposed cash. Now measure the debt against the property. The loan is $540,000. The price is $720,000. Loan to value is 75%. The lender finances 3/4 of the price. That tells Daniel how much debt sits against the building. It does not tell him whether the income can carry the debt. For that, divide the $60,000 net operating income by the $44,000 annual debt service. Debt service coverage is approximately 1.36. The property produces about $1.36 of operating income for every dollar of scheduled debt payment, 36 cents of cushion. Now stress the building. Assume vacancy and unpaid rent double. That removes another $6,000. Insurance rises by $4,000. Net operating income falls from $60,000 to $50,000. Debt service coverage falls to approximately 1.14. The property now produces $1.14 for every dollar of debt payment. Cash flow before tax falls from $16,000 to $6,000. After the $8,000 capital reserve, the property is negative by $2,000. Then the roof requires $30,000. The buyer began with $20,000 in reserves. The building now demands additional personal cash during a year when operating cash flow is already negative. Rent still arrives. The property still exists. The owner is still under pressure. At that moment, the real asset supporting the building may not be the rent. It may be the buyer's salary. Daniel cannot purchase Maple Court under conventional terms. His $42,000 is far below the $240,000 required. Then creative financing lowers the barrier. A bank will lend $540,000. The seller will carry a second loan of $120,000. Daniel with an equity partner will contribute $60,000 toward the price and other costs. Less cash is required. More of the building is financed. Combined debt becomes $660,000. Compare that with the $720,000 price. Combined loan-to-value becomes approximately 91.7%. More than 9/10 of the property is financed. Almost no buyer equity stands between an ordinary value decline and serious damage. Annual debt service rises to $56,000. Base case net operating income remains $60,000. $4,000 survives before capital expenditure and tax. Debt service coverage falls to approximately 1.07. $1.07 of income for every dollar of scheduled debt, 7 cents of protection. Now apply the stressed case. Net operating income falls to $50,000. Debt service remains $56,000. The property cannot carry its financing before the capital reserve even enters. The seller's loan reduced the cash required. It did not increase the rent. The bank may rely on collateral and other repayment protections. The seller's second loan preserves the price and a claim on future payments. Their willingness is not proof that the building deserves Daniel's capital. Daniel rejects Maple Court, not because property leverage is always wrong, because this property, at this price, under this structure, cannot survive ordinary pressure. A lower price could improve the economics. More equity could create breathing room. Higher durable income or lower expenses could strengthen the building. Creative financing alone cannot. The cash requirement fell. The property's ability to pay did not rise. Maple Court gives Daniel the next piece of the problem. Leverage can make entry easier while making survival harder, but leverage also produces something genuinely attractive. It can increase the return on the owner's cash. The next question is whether that higher percentage represents a stronger position or merely a thinner cushion. There are 3 broad ways to approach leverage. The cash-only buyer uses personally saved capital and avoids fixed debt claims. That can reduce repayment pressure, but it may limit speed and concentrate cash inside one asset. The reckless expander borrows for scale, speed, and impressive percentage returns without measuring how quickly a weak year reaches personal life. The disciplined capital controller uses debt only when durable cash flow, reserves, and downside survival justify the obligation. The issue is not speed, it is what leverage multiplies. Consider a hypothetical productive asset costing $400,000. It generates $40,000 in annual operating cash before financing and tax. Buy it entirely with cash. $40,000 divided by $400,000 produces a 10% asset return. Now buy the same asset using $100,000 of personal cash and $300,000 of debt. Assume annual debt service is $24,000. The asset still produces $40,000. Debt did not improve the operation. Subtract the $24,000 payment. $16,000 remains before tax. Divide $16,000 by the $100,000 of personal cash invested. The leveraged cash return is 16%. The asset earns 10%. The buyer's cash earns 16%. That is return amplification. The owner controls the same asset with less cash, increasing the return percentage. Now weaken the operation. Reduce annual operating cash from $40,000 to $25,000. Debt service remains $24,000. $1,000 remains. The leveraged cash return collapses from 16% to 1%. Reduce operating cash to $20,000. The asset produces a $4,000 shortfall after debt service. The owner receives nothing and must inject cash. The all-cash owner still receives $20,000. Same asset, same weak operating result, completely different pressure. Debt improved the percentage when performance was strong. It concentrated the pain when performance weakened. Now change the asset value instead of the cash flow. Suppose the $400,000 asset falls by 15%. It is now worth $340,000. The all-cash owner loses $60,000 in value. That is a 15% decline. The leveraged owner still owes approximately $300,000, ignoring principal already repaid. Equity falls from $100,000 to $40,000. The asset value fell 15%. The owner's equity fell 60%. The lender's claim remained relatively fixed. The owner's cushion absorbed the impact. That is loss amplification. A moderate asset decline can create a violent equity loss, but paper equity is not cash. Paper equity is estimated value after liabilities. It cannot make payroll, repair a roof, or meet next month's loan payment unless the asset is sold or another lender agrees to release money against it. Cash flow is current production. Equity is residual ownership. Liquidity is usable money available without unacceptable delay or loss. A person can have strong paper equity and weak liquidity at the same time. The loan payment creates another distinction. Suppose the annual $24,000 debt payment includes $8,000 of principal reduction. The owner receives $16,000 of cash after total debt service. The debt balance also falls by $8,000, increasing book equity, $16,000 in liquid cash, $8,000 in equity growth. Both have value. Only one can meet an immediate obligation. Now isolate the interest burden. Suppose $18,000 of the annual payment is interest. Divide $18,000 by the asset's $40,000 of operating cash. Interest consumes 45% of the asset's output before principal repayment or tax. That may be survivable when income is durable, reserves are strong, and financing is stable. It becomes dangerous when cash flow moves, rates reset, or the loan must be replaced. Refinancing risk is dependence on tomorrow's permission. A loan matures. A large balance becomes due. The owner assumes another lender will refinance it, but the future lender has promised nothing. Asset value may fall. Credit may tighten. The borrower may weaken. A structure that survives only through refinancing depends on approval that does not yet exist. Debt is not the only outside claim. Suppose a business requires $500,000. $300,000 comes from debt at an assumed 8% interest cost. An equity investor contributes $200,000 for 40% ownership. The company produces $110,000 in annual operating cash before financing. That is a 22% return on total invested capital. Subtract $24,000 of annual interest. $86,000 remains before principal repayment and tax. If distributed by ownership, the investor's 40% share is $34,400. The original operator receives $51,600. Debt has a contractual cost. Equity has an ownership cost. The investor may accept no distribution during a weak year, reducing fixed pressure, but the investor continues owning 40% of future success. Suppose the business is eventually worth $900,000 after debt has been repaid. The investor's 40% interest is worth $360,000. The investor contributed $200,000. The increased value is $160,000 plus any earlier distributions. Debt may be cheaper when performance is strong. Debt may be more dangerous when cash weakens. Equity can preserve liquidity and reduce fixed payments. Equity can also reduce control permanently. The correct choice depends on production, uncertainty, and which claim the owner can survive. Daniel now faces a different problem from the one that began his search. He still has $42,000. He decides that $24,000 must remain protected for his mortgage, children, household, and aging car. That leaves $18,000 potentially available for deployment. He could reduce mortgage debt. He could invest the money in liquid assets. He could continue paying for acquisition searches and due diligence. He could place it into an operating opportunity connected to his existing industry. Each use creates a different return, a different level of control, a different liquidity cost, and a different route through which failure can reach him. Getting access to money is no longer Daniel's central problem. Choosing where to place it is. Daniel no longer sees $18,000 as money waiting to be spent. It is deployable capital, and every possible use would change a different part of his financial position. Capital allocation is where ownership becomes real. Raising money creates possibilities. Allocation decides which possibility receives resources, which risk enters the system, and which opportunity remains unfunded. The most exciting use is not automatically the strongest one. Daniel needs a fast test. What return might the money produce? How durable is that return? How much can be lost? How quickly can the capital be recovered? How much control will he have? How much time will the opportunity consume? Can failure reach his personal life? Can he reverse the decision without severe damage? Those questions turn one amount of money into four very different positions. The first option is mortgage reduction. In a simplified comparison, if Daniel's mortgage costs 5%, applying $18,000 to the balance would avoid approximately $900 in annual interest. The benefit is predictable. His debt falls. His household becomes slightly less expensive to carry, but the money becomes difficult to recover. To access it again, Daniel may need to sell the home or ask another lender for permission to borrow against it. The return is modest, the certainty is high, the liquidity is weak. The second option is diversified liquid investing. Assume only for comparison a long-term average return of 7%. 7% of $18,000 is approximately $1,260 a year. That return would not arrive evenly. It is not guaranteed. The investment could fall precisely when Daniel needs the money, but it requires little operating time and remains more accessible than capital trapped inside the house. It also reduces Daniel's concentration in his employer and his own operating ability. The third option is continued acquisition searching. $18,000 could pay for accounting reviews, legal work, travel, technical inspections, and a modest partnership contribution. Daniel might spend part of it and acquire nothing. That does not make the expense useless. Due diligence that prevents a $700,000 error has produced a return by protecting Daniel from a much larger loss. The money may disappear from the account while preserving the rest of his financial life. But searching is uncertain. It consumes time, professional fees, and attention without guaranteeing ownership. The fourth option is inside Hale Commercial Climate, Daniel's employer. Hale installs and maintains commercial heating and cooling systems. It repeatedly outsources specialized controls work because it has no internal controls division. Daniel has watched customers, revenue, and technical knowledge leave through that gap. An internal controls operation could begin with advantages an independent launch would have to purchase or build. Hale already has administration, customers, insurance arrangements, supplier relationships, and industry credibility. Daniel could contribute operating knowledge and part of his capital. A qualified controls technician could supply the specialized expertise he lacks. This option has the strongest visible upside. It also creates the greatest concentration. Daniel's salary already comes from Hale. His professional reputation exists inside Hale. If he invests there as well, his income, capital, and future ownership opportunity become tied to the same organization. The opportunity becomes more efficient. Daniel becomes less diversified. Mortgage reduction offers certainty but restricts access to the money. Liquid investing offers diversification but little operating control. Acquisition searching offers larger ownership potential but can consume cash before producing anything. Hale offers customers, infrastructure, and a direct path into Daniel's field, but it places more of his working and financial life in one system. This is not a contest between percentages. It is a contest between positions. Would you deploy capital because the opportunity earned it, or because unused cash makes you feel unsuccessful? Would you preserve it because the structure is weak, or because every uncertain decision frightens you? Daniel does not invest immediately. He investigates. He keeps the $18,000 available while Hale's controls opportunity is tested. Uncommitted capital gives him negotiating strength. It allows him to examine ownership terms, technical requirements, customer demand, and personal exposure before desire turns movement into urgency. The delay is not passive. Daniel is refusing to let available money manufacture its own deadline. But the final conflict is not financial mathematics. Daniel wants visible ownership. Buying an entire company would give him a title people immediately understand: owner, president, entrepreneur. A smaller position inside his employer could produce stronger economics and far less visible status. After 12 years of saving, can Daniel accept a financially stronger decision that does not look like a dramatic escape? That question leads to a risk no spreadsheet can fully contain. The person using the capital can change after the capital arrives. Borrowed money affects behavior before it affects wealth. Access increases confidence. Confidence increases speed. Speed can outrun competence. A lender approves the loan. A seller accepts the terms. An investor agrees to participate. The operator interprets access as proof that the decision is intelligent. Access becomes validation. Validation becomes certainty. Certainty becomes exposure. Then money is committed, and the mind begins protecting the decision it once claimed to investigate. Fear of missing out says another buyer will steal the opportunity. Optimism makes the strongest year feel normal. Confirmation bias turns due diligence into a search for supporting evidence. After closing, sunk cost thinking takes control. Professional fees have been paid. Contracts have been signed. Reputation is involved. Admitting weakness now feels more painful than risking additional money. Past spending begins demanding future spending, but money already lost has no right to the next dollar. The only useful question is whether the next dollar still has a strong purpose. Fixed payments make that question harder. Loan obligations arrive on schedule. Customers do not. Under pressure, an owner can stop building the business and begin feeding the payment. Mara Lewis and Colin Voss begin with almost identical economics. Each acquires a hypothetical pest control company for $500,000. Each contributes $100,000 and finances $400,000. Both businesses produce approximately $140,000 in normalized annual cash before acquisition debt and tax. Annual debt service is $68,000. $72,000 remains. Same price, same financing, same opening margin. Then behavior creates two different companies. Mara pays herself $60,000. She keeps the remaining $12,000 inside the operation and maintains a separate acquisition reserve. She improves customer records. She documents routing procedures. She trains a supervisor capable of running the company without her for several days. Her first year is strong, but she does not interpret one strong year as a permanent proof of skill. She uses the success to reduce dependence on herself before considering expansion. Mara makes the company harder to damage. Colin's first year is also strong. His company collects more than $1 million in revenue. The revenue changes what success means to him. He buys a premium vehicle through the business. He increases personal withdrawals. He hires administrative staff before the workload requires them. None of those choices looks fatal alone. Together, they convert operating cash into visible evidence that Colin has arrived. The business begins financing his identity. 9 profitable months later, Colin adds a second service territory. The expansion requires vehicles, technicians, marketing, and working capital. He expects the original territory to fund the new operation until it becomes profitable. Potential growth increases. Fixed obligations increase first. Then a slow season arrives. Customer cancellations rise. 2 technicians leave. Several commercial customers pay late. The original company has not failed. Colin has removed the margin that allowed it to absorb ordinary disruption. The second territory loses $40,000. Vehicles and added staff create another $30,000 in annual cost. Colin's personal withdrawals continue because his lifestyle has already expanded around them. One strong year created confidence. Confidence created overhead. Overhead converted a manageable setback into a connected cash problem. Colin delays supplier payments. He hides the weakness from his lender for several months. He tells himself the next sales cycle will repair the damage. His behavior is understandable. Disclosure may trigger uncomfortable questions. Reducing withdrawals means admitting his lifestyle moved too quickly. Closing the new territory means recognizing that the expansion failed. So he waits. Denial consumes the time he needed to act. By the time Colin admits the problem, the company requires cash he no longer has. The original asset was workable. The operator made it fragile. Mara used early cash flow to create resilience. Colin used it to create appearance. Mara built a replacement for herself. Colin built more obligations around himself. Debt amplified both operators. It helped finance 2 viable acquisitions. It did not decide how the owners behaved after closing. Would Colin have expanded so quickly if nobody could see the expansion? Would the premium vehicle have felt equally necessary without the status attached to it? Ownership can become consumption wearing professional clothing, a larger office, a larger team, a more impressive title, a transaction completed because saying no now feels like personal failure. Daniel recognizes the threat. Buying an entire company would create a public transformation. A minority position inside Hale would look quieter. He would share control, receive less upside, and remain employed. The financially stronger structure may produce the smaller identity. Daniel creates 4 hard limits before negotiating further. $24,000 of family liquidity will remain protected. He will not place his home behind a speculative launch. He will not accept a plan dependent on future refinancing. He will not enter a structure that collapses when one expected customer pays late. Those limits reduce his maximum theoretical gain. They also prevent one transaction from controlling every part of his life. Daniel has now addressed the risk created by his own behavior, but discipline cannot protect him from a danger he fails to connect. A customer loss may be survivable. A technician departure may be survivable. A financing change may be survivable. Together, they can destroy a structure that looked safe when each risk was examined alone. Weak forecasts often test one problem at a time. Sales fall by 10%. A repair occurs. Interest rises. One employee leaves. Real financial damage rarely stays that polite. A customer leaves while a key employee is already stretched. Collections slow while debt payments continue. Reserves fall while the lender becomes less flexible. The business weakens, but the personal guarantee remains. Connected risk is a sequence. Westbridge Packaging Services is a hypothetical company that maintains and repairs packaging machinery for food manufacturers. The asking price is $1,200,000. After normalizing management compensation, maintenance expenditure, and working capital, Westbridge is expected to produce $220,000 in annual cash before acquisition, debt, and tax. The buyer contributes $200,000. Bank debt and a seller note finance the remaining purchase price. Annual debt service is $140,000. Subtract that from $220,000. $80,000 remains before tax. Debt service coverage is approximately 1.57. Westbridge produces about $1.57 of operating cash for every dollar of scheduled debt payment. The base case looks acceptable. Then the connections appear. One customer produces 22% of Westbridge's gross profit. The relationship has lasted 7 years, which makes the revenue feel stable. It does not make the customer permanent. One senior technician holds essential knowledge about control systems used by several major accounts. Documentation is incomplete. Part of the financing cost can change. A large principal balance also becomes due after several years, making the structure partly dependent on refinancing. The buyer retains $60,000 in reserves. That appears responsible until the failures begin arriving in order. First, the major customer moves maintenance work inside its own organization. Westbridge loses $75,000 of annual cash contribution. The original $80,000 cushion is nearly gone. 3 months later, the senior technician leaves. Recruiting and temporary subcontracting add $40,000 in cost. The company has lost revenue and become more expensive to operate at the same time. Then the variable portion of the financing increases annual debt service by $15,000. Expected cash before acquisition debt has fallen from $220,000 to $105,000. Debt service has risen from $140,000 to $155,000. Westbridge now faces a $50,000 annual shortfall. Then collections slow. Another $90,000 becomes trapped in accounts receivable. The invoices may eventually be paid, but employees, suppliers, and lenders need cash now. The $60,000 reserve cannot cover both a $50,000 operating shortfall and $90,000 of additional working capital pressure. The customer loss weakened earnings. The technician departure weakened delivery. The financing increase weakened coverage. The collection delay removed liquidity. Debt service continued through all four. One problem might have been contained. The chain overwhelms the system. Risk can be reduced to 3 questions. How likely is the hit? How deeply can it cut? Can the owner remain standing? Probability, severity, survivability. A low probability event can still be unacceptable when it can destroy the household. A common setback can be tolerable when the loss is contained and reserves are strong. The issue is not whether something will go wrong, something eventually will. The issue is what the failure can reach. That is where the personal guarantee matters. Depending on the agreement and applicable law, a personally guaranteed obligation may survive after the company stops producing enough cash. A limited liability entity can separate many business obligations from the individual, but it does not automatically erase personally guaranteed debt or legal exceptions involving misconduct. The company can weaken. The promise can remain. Savings, income, and other personal resources may become part of the recovery path. A guarantee may occupy one paragraph at closing. Under pressure, it becomes the bridge between business failure and family finances. Daniel applies this connected risk analysis to an independent controls company launch. A private lender is willing to provide $160,000. Daniel would contribute his available $18,000. The financing requires regular payments, a personal guarantee, and a large final payment after a relatively short period. 3 potential customers are willing to discuss service agreements. None has made an irrevocable commitment. An experienced controls technician is interested in joining, but only after the company secures enough work. At first, the pieces appear close enough to assemble. Then Daniel maps the sequence. He needs the technician to win the customers. He needs the customers to support the loan. He needs the loan to hire the technician. Each part depends on another part arriving first. The lender can provide money. The lender cannot force the sequence to work. If one customer delays signing, revenue becomes too weak to support the technician, Daniel's household income, and loan payments. If the technician leaves, Daniel can manage operations but cannot immediately replace the specialized programming skill. If the large final payment cannot be refinanced, Daniel must inject personal cash, sell an unproven company, or default. If the company fails, the personal guarantee can survive. The plan requires customers who have not committed, a technician who has not joined, and refinancing that no future lender has promised. Yet the money is available now. This is the test Daniel could not have passed at the beginning. The lender is willing. Daniel refuses. He is no longer impressed merely because capital has moved within reach. He rejects the launch because the sequence cannot support the obligation safely. This is a major change, but it is not the destination. Permanent rejection would only replace reckless borrowing with sophisticated paralysis. Daniel now needs a structure worthy of a yes. The private launch revealed exactly what that structure must solve. It needs existing customers, technical competence, operating support, and enough capital without placing Daniel's household beneath a speculative guarantee. Those elements do not exist inside the independent company. They do exist inside Hale. Daniel returns to Hale Commercial Climate with a different proposal. He does not ask Hale to fund an independent company that he alone will own. He proposes a dedicated controlled service operation built inside Hale's existing system. Hale already has customers, administration, insurance arrangements, supplier relationships, and industry credibility. Daniel contributes operating knowledge, customer understanding, and capital. The remaining weakness is technical depth. Daniel finds Priya Shah. Priya has spent 9 years installing and programming commercial control systems. She agrees to join for a salary and performance incentive rather than investing money. Her expertise fills the exact gap that made Ridgeway dependent on Laura and made Daniel's private launch circular. Now the terms can be stated clearly. Hale will provide $140,000 in initial capital for equipment, working capital, recruitment, and operating costs. Daniel will invest $12,000 for a 10% ownership interest under a formal agreement reviewed by appropriate advisors. He will remain employed at his existing $92,000 salary while leading commercial operations for the unit. Hale will retain 90% ownership and strategic control. Daniel will not own the entire operation. He will not receive all the upside. He will not hold final authority. The structure looks smaller than buying Brightline or Ridgeway. It is stronger where those transactions were weak. 4 existing Hale customers agree to initial service programs. They pay combined deposits of $24,000. That money is not profit. It carries a delivery obligation. A supplier provides 45-day payment terms on selected equipment. The credit reduces the timing gap between installation and customer payment. It does not erase the supplier's claim. Several forms of capital now work together. Daniel provides $12,000 and operating leadership. Hale provides $140,000, distribution, systems, reputation, and strategic control. Customers provide $24,000 in deposits. The supplier provides time. Priya provides the technical capability required to perform the work. No single source creates the business alone. The structure matches each missing requirement with a real contributor. After investing $12,000, Daniel retains $30,000 from his original $42,000. $24,000 remains protected for his family. $6,000 remains uncommitted. Daniel does not sign a personal guarantee for Hale's corporate obligations. The risk has not vanished. His $12,000 can be lost. The unit can fail. His professional reputation can suffer. His workload can increase. His employment can become more difficult. But a weak quarter does not automatically place his home beneath a lender's claim. This is the trade Daniel finally understands. Less ownership, less personal exposure, more surviving capacity. During the first year, the controls unit generates $310,000 in revenue. After technician payroll, equipment, supplies, administration, and other operating costs, it produces $38,000 in pre-tax operating cash. Daniel's 10% economic share represents $3,800 before considering the exact ownership agreement. He receives no distribution. The partners agreed that cash would remain inside the operation until it reached its working capital and reserve target. There is no dramatic check. Daniel does not leave his job. He does not become financially independent overnight. He still earns $92,000. He still has a mortgage, 2 children, and an aging car. His ownership interest is illiquid, and its future value remains uncertain. But his position has changed. He owns 10% of an operating system with customers, technical leadership, supplier support, cash flow, and a year of evidence. He deployed $12,000 and preserved $30,000. He maintained his salary. He avoided a personal guarantee for Hale's obligations. He gained operating experience as an owner without requiring his household to absorb the maximum downside. He did not use every dollar. He did not demand maximum ownership. He did not force a rapid escape from employment. Daniel began with salary-only dependence. His job then produced cash and competence. Those created credibility. Credibility gave him access to deals and lenders. Analysis gave him the ability to reject them. The final Hale structure converts part of that accumulated capacity into productive ownership. This resolves the original $42,000 conflict. The money did not have to choose between total safety and total deployment. Daniel protected $24,000 for his family, left another $6,000 uncommitted, and used $12,000 to enter a larger system supported by other forms of capital. He did not buy control of something large. He acquired a durable claim on something operating. Brightline offered $1,600,000 in revenue and the visible identity of a full company owner. The structure beneath that headline was fragile. Hale offers Daniel only 10%. The title is smaller. The operating support is real. The customers exist. The specialist is present. The working capital is funded. Daniel's salary remains intact, and the corporate obligations do not carry his personal guarantee. The Brightline walkaway was not the end of his ownership journey. It trained him to recognize the structure that deserved a yes. Daniel's final advantage is not debt, cash, or even ownership. It is the ability to select capital, negotiate its claims, and reject it when the complete system does not deserve the risk. He once needed money badly enough to be impressed by access. Now access must satisfy his judgment. A salary can provide stability without providing control. Consumption can look like progress while increasing the amount of future labor already promised. Fear can look prudent while preventing you from learning how productive assets actually work. Maximum leverage can look sophisticated while removing the margin that keeps an ordinary mistake from becoming a personal crisis. A bank can approve a transaction that remains wrong for the buyer. A legal ownership document can give you a title without giving you a transferable economic engine. Visible control can hide financial captivity. The first confrontation is simple. Are you building a stronger position or only a more impressive appearance? Daniel's transformation did not come from discovering a secret source of money. Capital was available through banks, sellers, private lenders, customers, suppliers, partners, and hail. His transformation came from learning what to do before accepting it. He learned to separate revenue from usable cash. He replaced seller claims with realistic operating costs. He measured working capital before assuming profit would be available. He tested whether customers and technical knowledge would remain after the seller left. He stopped treating low-down payments as automatic advantages. He tested what annual obligations remained after the cash barrier fell. He followed property rent through vacancy, operating costs, debt service, and capital reserves. He watched $120,000 of scheduled rent become $8,000 of practical cash. He learned that leverage can increase the return on invested cash without improving the asset itself. The percentage can rise while the cushion disappears. Paper equity can grow while liquid cash remains too weak to meet the next obligation. He traced personal guarantees beyond the business entity. He tested refinancing as permission that had not yet been granted. He stopped examining risks one at a time and began connecting customer loss, employee dependence, changing financing costs, and delayed collections. Most importantly, he became willing to destroy an attractive story before committing money to it. That willingness protected the $42,000 long enough for a stronger use to appear. But protection alone was not the goal. Daniel eventually accepted risk. He invested $12,000. He took operating responsibility. He placed his reputation inside a new unit. His ownership interest remains uncertain and illiquid. The difference is that the risk sits inside a structure with existing customers, technical competence, organizational support, funded working capital, and no personal guarantee from Daniel for Hale's corporate obligations. He accepted less upside than full ownership could promise. He also accepted less fragility. That is competent choice. Your next action should not be to borrow because leverage can increase returns. It should not be to buy a business because ownership receives more attention than employment. It should not be to purchase property because rent looks predictable. Start by making your financial position capable of analysis and patience. Build liquidity, not because cash eliminates risk, but because no reserve allows every setback to negotiate against you. Protect credit credibility, pay obligations reliably, keep records accurately. Understand what lenders and partners will see before you ask them to trust you. Learn the basic financial statements. Follow revenue until it becomes cash. Separate gross profit from operating benefit. Remove realistic wages, maintenance, vacancy, taxes, working capital, and financing before deciding what remains. Study productive assets before urgency places one in front of you. Learn how the business serves customers, which employee knowledge is essential, how quickly clients pay, what equipment must be replaced, and which relationships belong to the company rather than the seller. Read every guarantee. Understand which obligations remain inside the asset and which can follow you personally, depending on the agreement and applicable law. Test the repayment source in a weak year. Reduce revenue. Delay collections. Remove the largest customer. Replace the key employee. Increase one major cost. Assume refinancing is unavailable. Then ask whether the structure can still pay, still operate, and still leave your household standing. Walk away when the transaction requires perfect execution. Money spent discovering a fatal weakness is cheaper than money borrowed to own it. Allocate patiently. Available capital does not need immediate movement. It needs a position strong enough to justify the loss of liquidity, control, time, and reversibility. Some people will mistake patience for fear because they see only the transaction you did not complete. They will not see the guarantee you avoided, the customer concentration you refused, or the reserve that still protects your next decision. Others will mistake activity for intelligence. They will borrow more, acquire faster, and display ownership earlier. Speed can create wealth. It can also compress the time between error and consequence. The identity choice is now yours. You can look financially powerful by increasing the house, the vehicle, the company title, the property count, and the amount of capital under your control. Or you can become difficult to control. That means productive assets instead of permanent appearance, reserves instead of forced timing, skill instead of borrowed confidence, credibility instead of exaggeration, judgment instead of approval worship. It means being able to hear yes from a lender and still refuse the deal. It means allowing another buyer to take the impressive company when the cash flow cannot survive. It means accepting 10% of a strong system instead of 100% of a weak one. Capital can expand ownership. Capital can also expand fragility. Debt can increase returns when the asset performs. It can carry payment claims through the year when the asset does not. Equity can reduce fixed pressure while taking part of future success. Customer deposits can fund delivery while creating immediate obligations. Supplier credit can bridge timing while consuming trust. Every source of capital gives something and keeps a claim. Your job is not to avoid every claim. Your job is to accept only the claims your complete financial system can carry. Daniel began with $42,000 and believed the amount was his limitation. It was not. His limitation was the quality of the decisions he was prepared to make with it. At first, a large transaction looked like transformation. Brightline's revenue, Ridgeway's adjusted earnings, Maple Court's rent, and the private lender's money all offered visible movement. Daniel learned to see the pressure behind the movement. Then he chose a smaller position with stronger support, 10% ownership, $12,000 invested, $30,000 preserved, his salary maintained, real customers, real technical capability, real operating cash, no immediate distribution and no fantasy of instant freedom. What he gained was more useful than an impressive title. He gained another choice. That is the realistic ownership vision. Productive assets supported by reserves, skills that increase what you can operate, credibility that improves the terms available to you. Judgment strong enough to reject capital before capital narrows your future. Looking powerful is easy when someone else supplies the money. Remaining powerful after the payment begins is the test. Build the asset, protect the reserve, trace the claim, break the weak forecast. Choose the structure that can survive without turning every setback into a personal emergency. Real ownership begins where forced decisions end.